All right, are we okay? We're recording now. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Transportation Advisory Committee for Wednesday, June 28th. And I'll call roll here. Dan.
Present.
Mark.
Present.
Nick.
Here.
And I'm here, Laura Davis, and Phil will not be joining us today. He is out of town. All right, great. First order of business is I want to talk about our minutes. Nick, thank you so much for sending out the April minutes. They were really thorough. And we will have our May minutes to approve at our next meeting. Dan, thanks so much for working on those.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the delay on those, Laura.
No worries. And we'll need a note taker for this round. I'm wondering if Mark, you'd be willing to take this round of notes.
Sure.
Okay, great. All right, so did everybody get a chance to review the April notes that were sent out? Great. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Well, I was not present, so I can't really.
You're muted, Mark.
You muted, Mark, if you're.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I will move that we approve the minutes for April 2023 that were circulated.
Do I have a second for that? Well, I guess I'll second that.
Yeah.
Nick, you took them. All right, Nick.
Aye.
And Mark.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
All right, and I'm an aye as well. All right, so we will post those minutes to our committee meeting or our committee page on the website. I also wanted to share on the topic of minutes. I was at the chair's breakfast last week, and meeting minutes came up as a topic of conversation for all the committees in town. It was a reminder to keep our meeting minutes up to date. I'm going to take it upon myself to go through and see if we're missing any meeting minutes. I know that we discovered that we were missing one set of minutes that Phil is working on now, but I'm going to make sure that we are up to date on all of our minutes. So you may get an email from me about outstanding minutes if I discover any. And I wanted to state that my hope moving forward is that we can include the draft meeting minutes as part of the publicly posted meeting packet ahead of our meetings. So if we can get the minutes at least a week before a scheduled meeting, that'll mean that we can post it alongside the agenda. So members of the public can also, read the draft minutes and get a sense of what was discussed at the last meeting. So I just wanted to ask if that seemed like a doable thing for all the note takers here. I'm seeing a nodding head from.
We can try.
Okay.
Hey, Laura,
go ahead.
My only question would be, if we're circulating drafts, is that really something that the public should be looking at before we approve them?
The drafts are actually public record anyway, since we're all sharing them. So and there are other committees that do this. That attach their meeting minutes in a draft form to the agenda. It's helpful for members of the public because then they can understand if there's a continuing discussion, what was discussed at the last meeting without having to watch the whole.
I have a question, Laura. I saw your comments from the select board or wherever about the nature of the minutes. And in order to achieve that, what that would mean is if we have a long discussion about something, it's going to boil down to the committee discussed X. And if there's a major conclusion or something, that'll be documented. But is that really, I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure everyone else is.
Let me give you the context for that comment, because I'm not sure if everybody knows what I shared. So during that discussion at the chair's breakfast, there was some guidelines discussed, and there was a preference stated by one member of the select board for shorter minutes that were a little bit more concise, not exact transcripts of meetings in their entirety, especially since the recording is available. I think that we as a committee and we as individuals can strike the right balance for us. But I just wanted to share that there was a discussion about, it could be a one-page summary. And a member of the select board did say that that was ideal, but that it should have an outline of the items discussed, major points made, and then any votes, any items voted on. And we tend to have very, very long minutes as a committee. So I think it's just an invitation to be more concise if that helps us get our meeting minutes posted more quickly, especially. Does that make sense? Any other discussion on that?
It does. I just want to make sure we're all clear with that. So do we have the goal of keeping it down to something like just to mention the topic was discussed and any key decision points that were made? Because that's the only way you're going to get it to one page.
I'd say maybe like 1 to 2 pages. It could be if it's a particularly in-depth discussion, we could certainly have more.
Okay, I'm good with that. I just think putting a length on it, like 2 pages, is great because that really helps when you're trying to write the minutes. Because without any guidance like that, I mean, I at least just try to write up exactly what happened.
How do others feel on that? And do we feel like we need a vote on this topic?
No.
Okay. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think we need a vote, but I just want to say that I think you're right that we can kind of use judgment in terms of what to capture. And since the minutes are permanent record, obviously they definitely need to record votes. We're an advisory committee, so I mean, we kind of vote on our own things and vote on advice. So we're not really voting on legally binding anything. But I think a lot of the richness of the discussion is worth capturing. So I would strike kind of a balance in between, but aim for keep it to 2 pages, makes it easier, as Nick said, for the person preparing it. But if there happens to be some prime capturable points in a written document, that's better than a video, because I don't think anybody here, if somebody says, here's a 2-hour video, there's something you should watch. How many of those can we watch? So balance is good.
Yeah, that sounds great. So just to summarize the points were made, we're going to try to keep them around 2 pages, summarize the discussion, key points made, but they don't have to be a perfect transcript moving forward. All right. So with that, I'll move on to the chair's report. I'm going to just sort of rapid fire a bunch of things at everybody. I wanted to make sure everybody was reminded that tonight is the MBTA Communities Kickoff. It's at 6:30 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. You can attend in person at Harvey Wheeler, or you can attend via Zoom. It will also be recorded. And I think that it's particularly important for members of this committee to watch the recording, since this whole effort centers around, transit-oriented development, improving access to public transportation and walking. So super important for us to be tuned into this process. Some updates that I got at the chair's breakfast that I wanted to pass along is the select board announced that there is a 40B application filed for Baker Avenue, which will be 200, which the proposal is for 200 rental units, 50 of which would be affordable. And obviously this project would have some significant, transportation topics that would be good to discuss. The bridge over the Assabet River, for instance, would have a lot of, would be potentially important for this development. So good thing to have on our radar. The Concord Housing Development Corporation also provided an update that the Assabet River Bluff preview, they previewed some architectural renderings, so that project is moving ahead. And there is a draft request for proposal at Junction Village underway for family housing on the Junction Village site. So a lot of potential projects in West Concord with transportation implications. The planning board obviously gave an update on the MBTA communities requirement, and so they're leading the charge on that MBTA communities effort. So good for us to be in collaboration with the planning board on that. Separately from the chair's breakfast, the official bridge opening for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail the bridge is open, but the official ribbon cutting ceremony, which was originally scheduled for this Friday, has been postponed. And Aaron, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think a new date has been set yet. But that process is being run by the state, so we don't have a lot of control over it.
Yeah, the date hasn't been set yet again, but they're looking at possibly the second week in July, but I will keep you all apprised of when that date is chosen. Like Laura said, Mass DOT is leading the efforts on this, and we are just following in their footsteps and hoping to we're playing catch up a little bit, but we'll get there.
But I'll send out an email when that date gets scheduled. If there's going to be a quorum of our members at that event, we can publicly post it and use it as an opportunity to talk to people about transportation and how the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, is being used and things like that. And then finally, tomorrow at 11 a.m. is a site visit for the proposed 40B project, which is Riverside Commons, the one that I was mentioning before. So this is purely an informational opportunity. The town doesn't have any, there's no process in place at the town level at this point. So this is just an opportunity to learn about what's being proposed for that 40B development. So that's all that I'm going to talk about today in the chair's report. Any questions on that before I move over to Julie?
Laura, so for tomorrow, I think Nick is going and I'm going. Is that accurate?
Yes. I think Phil is still out of town. I'm not able to attend either.
Yeah, I've only heard from Dan and Mark so far. And like Laura said, it is just for informational purposes. The application is currently with the state, so the town doesn't have there's no application with the town right now. Anything that comes to the town will come later. So just be aware of that, if people start asking what the application with the town is, there is none right now.
Will you be there, Laura, Aaron?
Yes, I will be there tomorrow.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I think it's Nick and Ben that are guaranteed to go. I probably can't make it.
Oh,
There's a
okay,
chance.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so we'll definitely put that on a future agenda, so we can because I'd love to get the update from all of you about what was learned there and what you think the transportation implications are for the project. Since there will be three of you, I'll just put it on the agenda and you guys can tag team that, as long as that works for everybody else. So great. Well, with that, I think I will turn it over to Julie Dombrowski. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, from the Central Transportation Planning staff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me. First, before I start anything, I want to say that my office today is running test fire alarms. So if you hear background noise, that's probably it. The timing could not be worse, but so be it. But I just wanted to say that I'm here. I'm with the Boston MPO, and we've been working on a study over the crossings over Route 2 at Main Street, and then also at the intersection of Ornac and Route 2. And we've been looking at short-term solutions. The scope of the study wasn't super wide, so it's only those two intersections, not any other part of the town. But basically, I'm just here to share with you what some proposed interventions we came up with are. And I'm asking for your feedback and comments, and you all get to, share them at the end of this presentation, but also if you want to send it in writing as well, that's much appreciated. I also wanted to say John is here from MassDOT District 4, so if you want to introduce yourself, you can.
Yep. Hi, everybody. John Gregg, I'm the traffic engineer with MassDOT District 4 in Arlington. I haven't seen any of the proposals yet, so it'll be interesting to see what CTPS has come up with. Thanks.
Thank you, John. And then the last thing I want to mention before I start is I worked on this a little bit with my colleague, Casey Cooper. She is not here because she's on maternity leave. But she'll be back in July, so she'll be back to help finalize the study and get it out to you all. So, all right, so let's get started. So Casey and I visited, oh, I should share this, share my screen, sorry. Oh, I can't actually, I don't have the ability to.
I think Erin will be able to fix that for you. in just a
Okay,
second.
cool. But I can start anyways. Casey and I visited both
ahead,
of these
Julie.
intersections. We visited both of these intersections in February. So obviously not like the busiest time of the year, but there were still a good number of people that we saw out and about walking across Route 2 at both of these intersections. And I'm not local to Concord, but it definitely is not a place that I would feel very comfortable crossing the street. Obviously very high speeds on Route 2 and a lot of people seemingly unaware of people crossing. So, you know, we took some photos, we took some notes, and we noticed that generally the infrastructure conditions at the intersection of Main Street and Route 2 were a little bit better than those at Ornac. For example, like the pedestrian push buttons, like they were ADA accessible at the Main Street intersection, and the crossing was nicer, and there's actually like a median, a mid-block, so to speak, refuge. So if you don't get across Route 2 the entire way, you can stand there and wait and push the button again and then wait for the next cycle. But generally Ornac was a little bit worse. But Ornac is also, you know, as Emerson Hospital is there, it's also a concern for people who work at the hospital or maybe patients who want to walk to the hospital. We heard from a lot of Ornac folks that they just don't feel comfortable, not Ornac, sorry, Emerson folks, that they just don't feel comfortable crossing Route 2 here. And it's wild to me that there's a shuttle that takes employees from the lot across the street to the hospital, but I think that's just another example of like how unsafe people feel crossing here. This photo I just included of like the barely there, I don't really even want to call it a median, but a little bit minuscule, maybe. I think maybe it's like 3 feet wide of a refuge on Route 2 at the Ornac intersection. Yeah, it's not in great condition. It could use some help, definitely. But so we took our findings from in the field and we collected count data. Obviously, because this is a state highway, there's a lot of vehicular traffic going northbound and southbound on Route 2, but also a good amount of traffic on the side streets. There weren't a lot of pedestrian and bicycle counts when we collected them, but we collected them in late March, early April, so that could have some part of it, but that also could be another reflection of how unsafe people feel crossing here. And then we also looked at crash data. We didn't look at vehicular crash data. We only looked at crashes that involved pedestrians and cyclists because that was the main focus of this study. And in the last 5 years, there was only one reported crash that involved someone crossing the street. And it was actually last summer. There was a boy walking his bike across Route 2, someone making a right turn from Ornac to go south on Route 2, hit him in the crosswalk. So again, that brought up another issue that a lot of people, Aaron commented on, and we got feedback in from our survey that right turn on reds here is really not safe with the concurrent, when you have the pedestrian phase. So that's something that we're proposing is changed. So as I said, we issued a survey And I think it was open for a month or a little over a month, and we initially received like just over 600 responses, but after going through and sorting them, about 50 of those responses were unfinished. You know, people started it, they answered like 1 or 2 questions and then dropped off. So we got about a little over 550, which is still very significant. We do lots of surveys for our studies at the agency. We usually don't get this many responses. So again, this is, I think, also reiterating how people feel, how important it is that something is done at these intersections. And all of the complete survey data will be in the final memo. I didn't include it here, but some main takeaways were that the majority of people don't really cross at either of these intersections because they just don't think they're safe, or the few times that they have crossed, they don't feel safe, or they've heard about somebody who was almost hit. And then the people who do use them responded that most of the time they feel unsafe crossing or very unsafe crossing. A lot of people left comments about feeling like there was not enough time to cross Route 2. And then most people said that they would use the crossings more if they were made safer or if they felt safer. So we proposed changes at each intersection. So starting with the intersection of Route 62 and Route 2, extending the pedestrian phase by 3-4 seconds. I'm still kind of playing with it, which isn't a lot, but it does make a difference. But it also helps that there is that refuge there that people can stop at. And then if they don't get through the whole phase, they can wait for the next cycle. Restricting right turn on red on the westbound and southbound movements. So westbound, that would be going into West Concord and turning right onto Route 2, and southbound would be the slip lane there. Restricting right on red. And then changing the crosswalk markings, because right now they look like this, these just 2 bars. And typically those aren't the most visible markings. So we're proposing that they be restriped to the zebra style or the ladder style markings. We're also proposing, there is a section of pavement on Route 2. It's like zebra striped right now, and it's in the southbound direction of travel, and it's kind of like where the right turn lane would be if there wasn't a slip lane there. And I'll show you this on the map after the presentation, so it makes more sense, but proposing painting that and then adding in flex posts to shorten, quote unquote, the crossing distance, and also aid in visibility, especially if you don't have to paint it like this example, but if you paint it with a solid color, like a red, it's a lot more visible to people traveling southbound on Route 2, and it'll help them slow down and recognize, oh, there's a crosswalk here, there might be people crossing the street. And then we're also proposing, again, the scope of this study is just the intersections. So ideally, bike lanes would be extended along Main Street, but we're proposing a 6-foot bike lane on Main Street going westbound into West Concord, and 4 feet going eastbound into the center of town. This was just calculated based on total width of Main Street. Main Street's 30 feet wide. The westbound lane is wider than the eastbound lane. So the minimum required width for a bike lane is 4 feet, but the ideal width is 6 feet. So ideally, you would want 6 feet in both directions, but there isn't really room right now for 6 feet in both directions. But this is just important, especially for visibility of cyclists while they're traveling through the intersection. If you have that green, the striped green, that will make them a lot more visible to drivers who are approaching the intersection. And then next are proposed interventions at the Ornack and Route 2 intersection. Again, extending the pedestrian phase for the crossing of Route 2 and the crossing on Ornack. Restricting right turn on red for, I should say, southbound, east and eastbound, and northbound movements. I should have put northbound in there as well. Or not northbound, yeah, just southbound and eastbound. I apologize. Upgrading lighting. There were a lot of comments about how the intersection is kind of dark when the sun goes down. There's only one light at the intersection, which is kind of wild. By light, I mean street light. And there were also, I know Erin had mentioned that there have been in recent years like some near misses with people in the crosswalk kind of at dusk, like especially in the winter time or close to winter when the sun sets at, like 4:30 in the afternoon. We were also proposing that sharrow markings are painted on Ornack, which, just to note, sharrows are not considered adequate bicycle infrastructure. So this would be a temporary fix. And ideally you want actual bike lanes, but Ornack is not wide enough right now for bike lanes or for the minimum 4-foot bike lane. But this would at the very least let drivers know that there are people who use Ornack who are cycling. Again, similar to the other intersection, restripe the crosswalks. That will make them a lot more visible. Repair the median that I showed earlier, kind of crumbling, kind of falling apart. Nothing can really be done to make it wider right now. But at the very least, repairing it will make it easier to cross, especially for people who use a mobility device. And then also at the median, we're proposing installing flex posts like just around the curve of it, which would provide some more visibility to drivers to let them know like this is part of a crossing. And then some more signage on Route 2 and on Ornack that alerts drivers to the pedestrian crossing ahead. There is some there already, but the signs on Route 2 are just the yellow diamond with a person walking. And then the one on Ornack, it's an old one, but it's a lot of text. It says something about pedestrians, but basically upgrading those to the current MUTCD standards. And I think that will help a little bit with letting drivers know that there is a crossing at the intersection ahead. And then lastly, consider working with Emerson or Concord Police to maybe employ a crossing guard at that crossing on Route 2 during shift change hours when a lot of employees might be utilizing the crossing to get to the parking lot or to the hospital. Yeah. So our next steps for this study are, you all are going to tell me what you think today. And then I'm going to incorporate that into the memo. And then once there is a draft memo, I will send it to everyone here, everyone who attended this meeting, and you will have time to read over the entire thing and leave comments on it, propose edits, ask questions, and then I'll look at all of them and incorporate that into the final memo. And then the memo will be officially published and sent to the town. And hopefully this memo, in conjunction with the current study that MassDOT and VHB are doing on Route 2, will hopefully get the ball rolling for some improvements to be done. And again, these proposed interventions, they are short term. Some of them are quick fixes, but this is hopefully to spur more long-term investments at both of these intersections. And I've listed a few funding opportunities here for implementing this stuff, but there are a lot more. MassDOT has like a really great page on their website. I don't have the link for it right now, but they've got a great page on their website with a whole host of different funding opportunities for community transportation projects. And those will be included in the memo. So if you want to like look into those too, they'll be in there as well. So that's it, but I will pull up a map of both of these intersections if you'd all like, and we can walk through stuff if people have questions, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Julie, thanks so much for the presentation. It was very thorough. It looks like we have a couple of questions. So let's start with questions from the committee. And then I see that we've got a question from Erin, who is one of our town staff. So Nick, do you have, you want to start with your question?
Sure, a few. The no turn on red, I think that's a good idea, except for this place, the place where the slip lane is, where you're going from West Concord towards Concord Center and you want to turn on to right into Route 2. I don't perceive that as a place where there's a pedestrian crossing or needs to be. And I think that slip lane is important for the traffic flow.
Okay.
Because it really backs up at that intersection. Second thing is the bike lanes would go across Route 2 for both Ornac and Main Street.
Just Main Street. The proposed sharrows at Ornac wouldn't be like in the intersection. They would be on Ornac leading up to the intersection. And there would also be signs posted. I believe the MUTC standard sign is like bicycle may use full lane, just to like make drivers aware that there could be cyclists on the roadway.
And just to translate for those who may not know what a sharrow is, because we do have members of the public. Do you want to just explain what that is?
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
So it's a painting. It's a painted painted thing on the road that has two sort of arrows with a bicycle on it. So it's not a separated bike lane. It just is an indicator to drivers that there may be bicycles on the road.
Yep.
Let's see. I didn't get where the flex posts are going to be. Could you explain?
Yes, I can explain that. I apologize for not having too many visual aids, but I plan on developing them after. They'll be in the final memo, but I wanted to get some feedback from you all first before I went ahead and created a bunch of visual aids. But sorry, let me share my screen again. So are you talking about the flex posts?
I don't know where you're thinking of putting them.
So we're thinking of putting some like right here where the like little tiny median is at the intersection of Ornac and Route 2. Just to provide some like, those usually have like reflective stickers on them. So if it's at night, people can see them easier. And it's not really going to provide too much protection, so to speak, for people crossing, but it will alert drivers a little bit more like, hey, there is a crosswalk here. Because this is a state route, you can't really, because it's like basically a highway, you can't really put those like mid crossing. I'm sure you've seen they're like neon yellow and they say pedestrian and crosswalk, and they're kind of those like rectangular signs that you can put in the middle of a crossing. You can't really do that here. So that the flex posts are kind of doing that in a way, but yeah, so we're proposing some here, but then also some up at the intersection at Main Street. where this current like zebra striping is, so just along here. And then this is also the section that I was talking about. If it's repainted specifically with a color, it will make it more visible, and it also, you know, shortens, so to speak, the crossing distance across the southbound lanes on Route 2.
Yeah, just one comment. I'm disappointed at the fact that we don't seem to be able to do anything about increasing the size of the safety zone and the medians. And on that picture right there, I mean, it looks like it might be expensive, I suppose, but it looks like you've got enough space where those stripes are that you could move the lanes over a bit. Even 6 inches or a foot would make a huge difference for the perception of safety at a person who's caught on that island.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, remember, these are supposed to be short-term, low-cost fixes, so doing things like making the median wider might be a great, you know, might be a great sort of midterm.
I understand that. It seemed, the problem is it's probably trying to imagine somebody, for instance, in a wheelchair stopping in that island is absurd.
Oh, I mean, I agree. And well, the median at the Ornac intersection is not even really a median, and that's worse. I mean, at the very least here, there's a little bit of refuge. And there also is a grade difference here. This is raised from the roadway, whereas the one at Ornac is not. It's
Right.
at grade. So I agree. But again, yeah, these are only short-term improvements, and I know that they're not, I recognize that they're not like the, like, you know, it's not everything, but it is at least a start. And I think it's better than what's out there right now. Like more robust changes are something that obviously can be explored down the road,
Okay.
in conjunction with MassDOT, because again, Route 2 is, oh, I'm sorry, I heard the fire alarm voice again. Route 2 is a MassDOT route, so they have a role in the changes that occur on the roadway. Yeah. All right.
There's one final comment. I think the possibility of a crossing guard is amusing because I can't imagine where that person would stand.
Well, yes, it's something that I think could be explored with Emerson Hospital and the police department, but I don't know exactly how feasible it would be, but it is something I just wanted to mention.
If it's okay, I'm going to take Aaron next because he's had his hand up for quite some time.
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent. Julie, thanks for the presentation. I do have a few questions here. Just first time seeing this and kind of hearing about it. Are these recommendations and, you know, are these vetted by Mass DOT, or when does that happen prior to any implementation?
Well, I did invite Greg to this meeting for his comments and for his feedback. And then Greg and some other folks in District 4 are going to get the memo to review and provide input for. So they will have feedback in part of this, but in part of these proposals. But ultimately, this was something that was developed by CTPS, by the MPO. But hopefully it'll be something that the town and MassDOT together can use moving forward. In addition, like I said, to the study that's currently being conducted on Route 2, that I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, will be done at the end of summer, early fall. Hopefully it'll be used to actually spur changes and improvements at these intersections.
Okay, just for clarification for the folks, you know, I'm obviously I didn't come to the last transportation advisory committee meeting, but like Town of Concord Public Works doesn't have any jurisdiction on Route 2. So we can't do any of these installations. This is all up to the state if they want to adopt these and implement these. So just so we're kind of all on the same page on that piece. But a couple of other questions that I have. So some of the recommendations here obviously would likely what's the scope? Are you staying, like, for example, the bike lanes you're recommending, the 6 and 4 foot wide bike lanes, are those just within DOT's right of way, or are you proposing expanding those into the town of Concord's public right of ways as well?
That's a great question. I don't know how far past the intersection the DOT's right of way goes. I
There-
measured out about 500 feet in each direction, so not very far. Because the scope of this study was really just the intersections. So like ideally, if you're providing bike lanes, you do want to provide them along a longer stretch of the road. But they're more so proposed here for improved visibility of cyclists traveling through the intersection. So, but I could get, right of way plans and see what the exact where DOT right of way ends and where the town starts.
So for both Ornac and Main Street intersections along Route 2, they recently paved those. If you were to go out and see, you can see where the joint abuts the new pavement versus the old pavement. That's roughly where the right of way limit is for both those intersections. And I believe Main Street's still flagged with some stones and stuff. So if you were to do a site visit, I mean, I'd also can meet you out there, or somebody from our engineering group to kind of show you that as well. Those were my two kind of questions. I would also recommend, is there a way that the town get a copy of this proposal? Because I definitely want to share with the rest of the folks within my public works team.
Yeah.
I don't know if our engineering group has seen any of this stuff yet.
Yeah, Aaron, I've already spoken to engineering, and I'm going to send them the presentation and the recording after this.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same. I can send the presentation and then you all will be copied on the email with the draft for you to read the entire memo and review.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful clarifying question, Aaron. Thanks for asking. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some more detailed questions or comments, but I just wanted to make one thing first, and then I'll let other people continue. I think it would be extremely valuable. I understand that this particular study is focused on these short-term solution, things that could be implemented quickly, but I think it would be extremely valuable if there's some mechanism to capture comments like what Nick said about widening the kind of little safety areas or things like that for future consideration.
Yes.
If there is going to be reconstruction. So I'd suggest there be a formal process to bucket those as part of the report. Thank you. A great report. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I will definitely make note of that. I was already intending to include in the final section like further recommendations for future improvements, for longer term improvements. So I will definitely be sure to mention that. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the committee? I think we'll go into sort of the feedback phase that Julie was asking for. So feedback on the proposal from committee members. Committee members have more to say on that. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just confused on the Main Street crossing, Julie, and thank you for the comprehensive assessment of this. But I ride my bike through that intersection quite a bit, and coming back from West Concord, where you're showing it right now,
Yep.
That right turn lane onto Route 2, that seemed to me that does always strike me as the most treacherous section of that roadway, because there's really nothing that stops the cars from turning into us, and there's no, in order to get to the safety zone where you've got the zebra striping there. So up north of where you are, where where the curve section to enter Route 2 is.
Yeah, this slip lane.
Oh, I get, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it was under the tree. I was looking on the other side. I'm disoriented there.
Oh, I apologize. Oh, or are you talking about this one? Or no, you said to enter Route 2.
Yeah,
so
I think that's the correct one there.
Mhm.
But as far as that 10 feet of bicycle lane, where do you pick that up? I mean, there's not a lot of roadway there.
Yeah, so the total, like the total width of the roadway, this is something that could go back out and measure, or again, looking at the right-of-way plans will tell me. But just from Google Maps, the width of the roadway, I mean, here it's wider, but generally the width of Main Street is 30 feet. So if you say you have a 6-foot bike lane going westbound in West Concord, and then a 4-foot one going eastbound into downtown Concord, then that leaves you about 10 feet for each vehicular lane, which 10 to 11 feet is typically like what is standard. You wouldn't really, especially on Main Street, you wouldn't really want the vehicular travel lanes to be less than 10 feet, just because of the volumes of the street and the speed limit. So that's basically how I calculated it. It's 30 feet. So 4 feet on one side, 6 feet on the other side dedicated to bike lanes, and then 10 feet each
yeah.
for vehicles.
Understood. It's just, that the cars are using the 30 feet right now. I mean, what
Right.
you're proposing is cutting 30 feet down to 20 feet.
Mhm.
So that's a fairly substantial drop for cars. I mean, speaking from a driver's perspective, it just, I worry that constricts it a lot. But the other thing, I wasn't kind of aware that, is there any sort of a pedestrians only cycle there? Because when I was on my bike, I just went when the green light went, and there hadn't been any pedestrian only stretch of time to cross.
So at both of these intersections, the pedestrian phase comes on concurrently with whatever the vehicular phase is that's going the same direction. So if Main Street has the green, then the pedestrian crossing Route 2 has the walk. So I thought about proposing exclusive pedestrian phasing at both of these intersections, but the issue with that is typically exclusive phasing is safer in some aspects, in that only pedestrians are moving and no vehicles are moving. But oftentimes pedestrians have to wait longer during an exclusive phase for the pedestrian phase to come on. And sometimes when they have to wait longer, they become impatient and they might cross when it's not on, which could lead to more dangerous situations. So that's why I'm proposing keeping the pedestrian phase concurrent, but restricting those right turns on red, I think will help a lot. But I don't know, maybe John could speak on it more. The other thing is that the signals at both of these intersections are coordinated, or at least they're supposed to be coordinated. I don't know what, but that basically means so vehicles travel through, like kind of flow through easier. Again, this study wasn't focused on vehicular movements, so I didn't really look into that as much. I was really more focused on what can we do to improve movements of people on bikes or pedestrians. Another thing to note is that a lot of people in the survey commented that they ride their bikes, especially I think on Main Street where these comments were prevalent. The detection for the signals seems to not be detecting bikes, bicycles, or motorcycles. So that's something that I think will also have to be a longer term study, and something MassDOT might have to look into and upgrade the detectors. So that's just something else I wanted to note there and comment there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the crossing there by bike, I mean, frankly, I felt safer. I feel safer crossing Route 2 than I do with the further stretch going into West Concord to meet up with the Bruce Freeman, but the whole thing is a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take Mark and Nick, but I do want to I have a comment of my own that I want to say in regard to those two things that were just said. The first thing is about the signal timing with pedestrians, and I wanted to ask specifically in your presentation, restricting right turn on red. I understand why that's done at intersections. Like a good example in Concord would be like Thoreau and Sudbury, like why you would want to restrict right turn on reds there to prevent people from being hit in the crosswalk. But I don't understand the like pedestrians move with the traffic. I don't understand the rationale behind the right turn on red, because as a pedestrian and a cyclist crossing at these places, the people that I'm most worried about being hit are the people who are turning on green. Those are the people who are most likely to hit you in a crosswalk. Because if you are crossing with traffic that's traveling in the same direction as you, who might turn across the crosswalk. So that's the threat that I always feel at those crossings, but I'd love for you to explain how reducing right turn on red would make it safer.
Well, reducing the right turn on red obviously restricts people. Sorry, I'll go down to Ornac because it's a better example, I guess. Restricting right turn on red, like for example, if you have these vehicles on Ornac traveling, they have the green light, then this pedestrian phase is on. Restricting this right turn here protects these pedestrians. And then also vice versa the other way, if these are green and this is red, restricting right here protects these pedestrians. Again, right turns here on red might not be possible during certain times of the day because vehicular flows on traffic on Route 2 might be so high. The other thing that I haven't fully completed the signal analysis. The other thing that I'm trying to do is, because I don't know if it's existing there currently, is leading pedestrian interval, which means when the walk signal comes on for people crossing, all of the lights are red for a certain number of seconds, and then whatever vehicular phase is called comes on. So it gives people a head start, so to speak, so they're less likely to have a conflict with someone on green making a right. Like, for example, if this is green, they're making a right turn onto Route 2. These people crossing would get a head start by a certain number of seconds. So that's something I'm also looking into and might be in the final recommendations or final report, I should say.
That was really helpful. And I think that you've totally convinced me that restricting right turn on red at Ornac makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I understand the rationale at Main Street, given the slip lane issue. But I think that I could be convinced. And I will just follow up by saying my other question was actually about giving pedestrians and cyclists a head start at those intersections. And I will say, as somebody who crosses on a bike most frequently, having a bicycle head start would be hugely advantageous, because the biggest challenge is having somebody turning and not seeing you until the last second. So if bicyclists could get out into the intersection first, I think that could make a huge difference. Pedestrians as well, but I think especially for the cyclists, that would make a huge difference. I'll turn it over to, I don't remember who was first. So if one of you, whoever you thinks they were first, Mark or Nick can go first.
Mark was first.
Thanks, Nick. Oh, thank you very much. So I think it's interesting to compare these two intersections. I think for the Ornac intersection, the idea of improving lighting, marking, considering timing, the posts that indicate also kind of, I think, help reduce a motorist's tendency to cut a corner, which would make that little safe area even more hazardous. I think those are all good. So I think those are a lot of good things, and I think the limiting right turn on red there is relatively straightforward, as Laura said, to kind of understand. The other intersection, I think, the Main Street, just kind of, jumping up. I wouldn't underestimate the challenge and the amount of analysis that needs to go into the different motorist, cyclist, pedestrian behavior and desires here and perceptions, because it's, to state the obvious, it's a high-speed highway at grade crossing with a local road at a rather severe angle. And so the whole thing about timing and line of sight and sense of safety for even motorists. I mean, if you're a motorist there wanting to cross Route 2, you're aware that somebody might miss a red light or jump a red light and be going at quite a high speed. So your attention is going to be riveted on your own safety there. That's going to distract you from looking for pedestrians and cyclists, unfortunately. So the other thing is, like, if you look at the distance between the stop line of Main Street entering from the east, where that little black car is, and where the pedestrian crossing is,
right.
The amount of distraction of a driver trying to bend around more than 90 degrees left to see if somebody's missed the red light or this or that. So I would just, I'd leave it to you and the analyst and the engineers, both MassDOT and town and whatever, to just kind of carefully plot out all those interactions and think about, both the short-term and long-term things. The same kind of thing I think applies for people making right turn off of Route 2 coming from the northwest there, wanting to go into West Concord, that they may be coming from a fairly high speed. They say the light doesn't apply to me, and then they come around the curve and they see a crosswalk. And I just want to point all these things out. I really appreciate all the work you're doing, but this is this could be a textbook example of a strange intersection, even though it's only two roads. It's a little bit like a three-way crossing in some sense.
Yeah, it is like crossing a freeway, and it is very skewed, so that does lead to some sight distance issues for sure. But thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, this whole issue of the traffic light timing, I would very much like to know in detail what the current setup is of these two intersections. I think that the statement you made about why I forget what the term is, but why in some sense it's safer if there's no pedestrian cycle on the light, I think that doesn't really hold. Route 2, I know at Bedford Road in Lincoln, the eastbound, westbound on Route 2, that light cycle could be 2 full minutes, okay? Even someone waiting there who's a pedestrian is going to be tempted after a minute and a half to just try to run across the street. I don't know what the timing cycles are here. I don't know if they're coordinated. I, on behalf of the committee, would really like to know what the setup is on these two traffic lights, because it's very important. And I do think a pedestrian cycle is appropriate. The other day I was driving on Main Street towards West Concord. When I came through this intersection, there was a person on this, if you've crossed Route 2 heading towards West Concord, right where that turn lane is, there was a pedestrian pushing what I thought was a button, and he looking very confused. So I don't know how that is at the moment, but my perception is there are buttons there.
There are, yeah.
They're going to set expectations, but from what you said, they don't do anything.
No, so when the pedestrian phase comes on when it's actuated, when somebody presses a button. So if nobody presses a button, it doesn't come on, but it still runs concurrently with, like, at this intersection, it runs concurrently with the Main Street phase.
Does that mean only that the pedestrian light goes on and there's no other change in the traffic light?
I'd have to go back and look at the timing plan, but yeah, this light will come on if
Okay,
it's
so
actually,
pressing the button, your perception is that at the moment, if you press the button, it does absolutely nothing to the light cycles. It just causes the white pedestrian light with the picture of the person to come on.
I can't say for sure. I'd have to go back and look at the data.
That's a
the signal
cruel
data.
joke, I think.
Sorry?
That's a cruel joke.
The signal plans, I can put in the memo. I was planning to attach the synchro analysis, which is the traffic software that we use. But I can send the signal plans as well.
My perception is that the lights aren't necessarily triggered by the presence of vehicles, or if they are, it's only at certain times of the day. And that at rush hours in particular,
Yeah.
Something overrides it so that Route 2 keeps going.
Right, they're on, I believe they're on actuated coordinated timing plans. So
Yeah,
there is
I-
actuation, but there is also, they're coordinated to run on specific cycles at specific times.
I think transparency is really needed in terms of what the light cycles are and what the programs are at these two intersections, because they are so dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't trying to make it seem like exclusive pedestrian phase or concurrent pedestrian phase, one is safer than the other. They're just used in different applications. And the only concern I have with an exclusive pedestrian phase here is how long, especially at certain times of the day, how long somebody might have to wait to cross the street. And then
Agreed.
also what impacts that would have on travel throughout the corridor.
Yeah, as
so-
both a pedestrian and a driver, one of the things that always bothers me when you come to an intersection is the mystery about the programming and not knowing what the hell to expect, okay? It's just ridiculous. I mean, there should be a sign on each traffic light that tells the pedestrian what to expect.
Before I take Mark's question, I have a couple comments that I want to share in this thread. First of all, I grew up in New York, right next to the Bronx River Parkway at an almost identical intersection to this one, which did have a dedicated pedestrian crossing. This was an at-grade neighborhood crossing across the Bronx River Parkway, which was very similar to Route 2 in its size and traffic flow. And I never waited for that pedestrian crossing, not even once as a teenager. I ran across the road against the traffic pretty frequently. So when it is a 2-minute wait, that is definitely something that happens. I can say from personal stupid teenage experience. But I just, in response to your presentation, Julie, I have a couple of comments. First, I just want to share, because not everybody's been in these conversations. We had a lot of conversations. We as the committee had a lot of conversations last summer with residents. And I did just want to say that this was the issue that came up over and over and over again in terms of the transportation barrier that Concord residents and visitors to Concord have, is they can't get across Route 2. They don't feel safe getting across Route 2. And I think this is the perfect example of that phrase that people say, which is, it's hard to justify the construction of a bridge by how many people swim across the river. Like, there aren't that many people crossing by foot and on bicycle here because people feel so unsafe. So a couple of comments that I have is, I love the idea of posting bikes may use full lane signs in these locations. We actually don't have any of those around town. And as somebody who often takes the lane as a cyclist, because I have a small child and we're going around a blind curve and I take the lane, people don't know that that is the law here in Massachusetts. And I get passed around blind curves. I have people honk at me. So I think more education for drivers that is Massachusetts law would be fantastic. And this is a great location for those reminders. So I'm in strong support of that. I did want to say I'm also in strong support of even minimal bike lanes at the Main Street crossing. I'm usually a huge fan of bike lanes. I don't actually know how many cyclists use the Ornac crossing because it's not a major bike route, but the Main Street crossing is such a critical bikeway connector, and even minimal bike infrastructure there that would alert drivers to the fact that there are lots of cyclists that use that would be awesome. I did want to ask if you maybe considered at that particular location, like a bike box in front of the traffic to provide even more visible infrastructure and to allow bicyclists to come up in front of the traffic. So that they could like prepare to cross that intersection. I guess the trade-off there, of course, is that if the cyclists are the first people to proceed into the intersection and somebody runs a red light, as somebody who has been hit at a Route 2 crossing in my car because of somebody running a red light, I do fear for cyclists being hit by people running red lights. So I don't know what the trade-off is there in terms of getting cyclists out into the intersection. I'd be really interested to know what the data is about that kind of thing if there is data for such a thing at a crossing like this. So those are a couple comments. I think that longer crossing phases and more prominent markings are huge. They're short-term fixes, but that could be really helpful. It is a really short light there. I did want to ask, in terms of the 6 foot and 4 foot, is it prohibitively expensive to move a center line to have 5 feet on both sides so that it would feel more balanced and more spacious? Or I'm just curious if that's like maybe that's more expensive than I think it is in my mind.
I couldn't tell you the exact cost. Maybe John has an estimate or idea. I would assume it would be more expensive than just doing a 4 foot and a 6 foot bike lane, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure. It also, center lines also, have to do with alignment, like especially when you're approaching an intersection, how vehicles are aligned and stuff. So I don't know, maybe I don't know, John, if you have an answer to that, but
Yeah, it's a little more expensive than you would think because number one, you have to grind out the existing lines that are going to be in conflict with what you're trying to accomplish. And Julie, you're right with alignment, say from one side to the other, there could potentially be issues with that. Now that's not to say a 6 foot and a 4 foot were put in, that sometime in the future, if it comes to a point of where the roadway is going to be resurfaced again, that would probably be a good opportunity to try to balance things out. At that time, that would be my suggestion. Yeah, I mean, the six and the 4 foot, I think could work for the time being. And, folks probably wouldn't get thrown too much by it. I would be a little concerned, as it's been expressed, about the 30-foot width and just the 10-foot lanes, because that can feel very tight for vehicles. We'll do that at intersections, for turning lanes and things like that. But if you do it for long stretches on, a road like Main Street, it could be, a little claustrophobic. Maybe the cars would tend to creep closer to the bikes, which is what we want to avoid as well. So there are some things to think about with that.
I would just interject. Right now, the center lines on Main Street do not line up. They're off by at least 4 feet.
And I do want to say that I think that, to echo what Dan was saying earlier, that slip lane that we're seeing here that goes off to the what is that, to the east?
this one
From West Concord going eastbound into Boston.
here. Yeah.
That is definitely where I feel most vulnerable as a cyclist.
Right here.
And I think in that area, well, sort of back, if you go back towards West Concord, as you're crossing the entrance to that slip lane and you're mixing with a lot of traffic, it's an extremely wide road in that particular spot, and it's sort of unclear where cars are going. People don't always use their turn signals, and in that particular location, having a marked bike lane to help guide drivers and alert them that there might be cyclists and that they're going to be crossing a bike lane, and I think that would be enormously helpful just in terms of clarifying where cars should be, where the cyclists will and might be. would be really, really helpful. So I agree with you, John, like having really narrow, unprotected bike lanes all the way down Main Street might not be a great long-term solution, but just in terms of short-term fixes for this intersection that could have just short amounts of bike lane might be very helpful here. I think that was all of my comments. I wrote them all down here. I just wanted to ask, the only last thing was I want to make sure that we can post this presentation to the tax website so that the public can review this after the fact. Erin, is that something that we can do? I'm
Yep,
seeing,
no
okay,
problem.
great. Awesome. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of following up on what Laura had said about cyclists use the travel lane and cars share it, et cetera. I think that's really important. If I, again, try to jump up and look at this whole intersection from the standpoint of cyclists, I mean, cyclists are not using the Route 2, they're crossing it, they're going on Main Street. And coming from Main Street on the east to Main Street on the west of the intersection, that is a very, very long section of unmarked pavement, no guidelines, no nothing. I don't know if in that, if there are any standards for MassDOT to have markings across a highway that indicate where the center line of the crossing road is, or I'm assuming you wouldn't put green bike lanes across the intersection, but even if there was a continuous dashed center line along there, it would kind of, if there's a possibility of the rules allowing that, it would kind of help the cyclists, and in conjunction with signs that say to cross Route 2, cyclists share the motorist lane, or however the wording is, it would tell them where to go. Because otherwise, if I was coming in from the east on a bicycle, I would not know whether I should try to go over to the pedestrian crosswalk or go to the right of the traffic or be in the middle of the lane. And this also applies to what Dan and Laura were saying about the slip lane for right turn coming from the west on Main Street. That yes, that whole area there is like a mixer of bicycle and motor vehicle without any kind of clear guideline of especially to motorists and about rights. I'll just throw one other comment out is I feel like in these complicated shared, or I prefer to think collaborative locations between different transportation modes, everybody needs to be patient, give something up. And I think motorists need to assume that this is not a throughway for Main Street. This is actually they shouldn't be conscious just of getting hit by a semi coming on Route 2 and running a red light. But they should also be conscious that there's these other modes, pedestrians and cyclists, and whatever can be done with markings or signage or education to say this is a collaborative place. For some reason, it reminds me of railroad crossings, where there are a lot of at-angle railroad crossings and complicated stop lines way back, and bars that come down. But anyway, deserving of some thought and consideration. Thank you for all this work.
I'm gonna play timekeeper here. We've come to the end of our hour that we've budgeted for this topic, and I promised Nick that we were going to keep to 90 minutes today because he has another committee meeting at 1 o'clock. So I wanted to say that I'm going to submit some more comments in writing, and I would urge other committee members to do the same as we move forward. If you think of more things, but I do want to give both Ron and Janet a chance to ask their questions before Julie jumps off. So I will open it up for brief public comments so that we can wrap this up and move on to our other agendas. And so Janet, if you want to go first, because I saw your hand first.
Your microphone is off.
You're muted, Janet, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how pleased I was that you're thinking about safety of these crossings. I have ridden my
Janet,
bike.
could you give your name and address? Sorry.
Oh, yes, sure. I'm sorry. Janet Miller, 1647 Main Street, Concord. I have ridden my bicycle across these intersections many times. And the most threatening thing, as Laura has indicated, is if you're going towards the center of town, that slip road onto Route 2 is, it's very intimidating, to say the least, because a lot of people, a lot of traffic is going to be turning right there, and you really have to be out of their way. And do they know what you're doing? And I mean, I tend to claim the lane and just hope, but it would be really helpful to have some paint on the ground so people know what you're doing. I've ridden across the Ornac intersection probably most frequently from from a town towards West Concord, and I do that mainly so I don't have to go through the middle of West Concord to get to my home. It's a slightly longer route, but I like it better. So, I mean, I don't feel particularly threatened on that crossing. It's, anyway, that's all I want to say. But basically, thank you.
Thank you.
Janet's comment raised a question for me, which is, if members of the public want to give you more feedback, how can they do that?
That is a good question. So when we one of the last questions on the survey that we published was basically like, would you like to be contacted for and like asked more about your experience at these crossings or what you'd like to see. And I'm working with our communications and engagement team here at CTPS to kind of put together some questions to send to the folks who did respond to that question. They said, yes, I would like to answer more questions. And we were just planning to send them via email and giving them like a week and a half to respond, basically. But we don't have any other plans for other public comment. Yeah, but I mean, it's something that we can discuss and talk about, like what else we could do to get public feedback, I guess.
If you want to give us an update on that whenever you come up with a plan, if you do, that would be great. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well for the presentation. Obviously, we'd be supportive of any safety measures that Mass DOT, the town, the committee agree upon, except for the crossing guard. I just wanted to throw that out there. It was a good thought, but we can barely get crossing guards to cover the schools, and I wouldn't feel comfortable putting them out on the highway. So.
And Ron, just for the record, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ron Holsinger. I'm the safety officer for the police department.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll probably remove that from the the proposed interventions. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say thank you again, everyone, for having me come and talk to you about this today. I really genuinely appreciate all your feedback. It's really important for these studies that we do. And I also wanted to say that I will send this presentation to Erin so that she can send it to you all and send it to anyone else, like in the public works or engineering department or police or fire or anything like that, so that you all can look at it and, give me some written feedback. And again, you will also all have the opportunity to review the full memo once it's completed. And I'm hoping that will be sometime mid to late July. You'll get a chance to review the memo.
Thank you so much, Julie. It was a great presentation, a great discussion. Thanks for joining us, John. And thanks for our town staff who joined us for this discussion too and asking great questions. Oh, they're already gone. Thanks to everybody who participated in this.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Take care.
Much appreciated.
All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin to give us an update on the comprehensive transportation study.
So the update is that we have written our award letter and are ready to send it. It is in progress right now. Because it is the end of the year, the fiscal year. It took a while for things to get through the finance department. They have to okay the contracts and the award letters and things like that. So we are sending those out today. And once that is sent and they have received it, then we can let you all know who we have awarded it to. But we are very confident in this firm and their ability and their how this whole process will go. Even, going through this presentation and speaking with Julie for the past few months, I've sort of thought of, quite a few things. We've discussed a couple of different things that really make me more excited to go through this study. I also want to, just while I'm, have the floor here, just want to mention once again that the MBT Communities info session is tonight. Don't forget about that. It will be recorded if you aren't able to make it. We also are going, there's the website that if you go on to the town's website, there is a button right on the front page if you want easy access to it. But we are going to be we're going to have 2 virtual sessions during the summer, which will provide opportunities for people to give us their feedback on zoning and where they think that the zoning should go, their thoughts on the actual zoning language, as well as we're going to have sort of like a ask the planning department, ask the planners weekly office hour, so that you can come in more of a casual setting and say, I really don't understand this concept, or I'm trying to wrap my head around what the zoning will do, things like that. And we can try to work through it with people, just sort of an extra opportunity to have those conversations. So I just wanted to note those, and that we requested the signs for the 4-foot passing of the vulnerable users. We requested 50 of them for when you're coming into town on specific roads, not all roads, because not all roads see the same sort of bicycle or pedestrian traffic. But where we know that we have a lot of bicyclists and pedestrians, where there are no facilities like sidewalks, or there are higher speeds, things like that. We went through and did a whole sort of look at the town and said, okay, where would these most be the best to be placed? And we ordered about 50 signs. So we're going through that process now, and hopefully we'll get them in the next few weeks. And that's it.
Thanks for the update, Erin. So we are at 12:25, and I promised that we would end at 12:30.
I'm okay.
So, okay, so we had an item on this agenda to review our transportation priorities, which I think is a really important thing for us to do, but we'll have to move that to our next meeting so that we can finish up. Did we have any correspondence, Erin? I don't recall.
No, you're skipping my topic.
Oh, unless you, I'm
no,
sorry.
I want to do it. I have time to do it. I have
Okay.
time. It'll be quick.
Mark and Dan and Erin, does it work for you to extend this meeting by 15 minutes? Okay, great.
Yeah.
I might have to.
Let's do it.
Can I share screen?
Sorry, say that again.
I'm sharing screen, right? Hold on.
Dan, did you
Yeah,
say it was okay?
I can go another 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, I'll go quick. Here we go.
I might have to jump off, but it will keep going if I do.
The committee's been doing really good, in my opinion, really good stuff in terms of learning, using some specific possible projects to educate ourselves, and I'm really good with that. On the other hand, we also presented our roadmap to the select board about a year ago now, and I just feel an obligation we need to realign ourselves with all of that in terms of what our priorities are. So these are just my thoughts. The first thing is, it seems to me the most important priority we have is the roads. Without the roads, we can't do anything. We can't improve the roads for bicycles. We can't support anything we want in terms of things. So this needs to be acknowledged as a very high priority. Without good quality roads, improvement initiatives stumble. The other thing is that I don't know if we've lost sight of it, but it occurred to me, I've lost sight of it, which is the benefits of a bus service in Concord are overwhelming. And I'm just going to say this quickly. More riders per vehicle reduces energy consumption. More riders per vehicle reduces road congestion. Buses serve those who can't afford a car. Buses operate in all weather. Buses serve the elderly who no longer drive. Buses serve those who are too young to drive. Buses cross Route 2 more safely. Buses serve tourists who arrive by train. Buses reduce the need for parking in business and residential areas. Bus service brings more people to cultural organizations and businesses. Lack of public transportation discourages low-income residency in low-income housing. Bus service will encourage multifamily development with reduced parking. And reducing the parking means they can put in more housing units, which makes the investment more opportune for the developer. Bus service creates opportunities for social interaction. This issue of the need for social interaction in the community came up at a select board meeting where they were discussing some of the purposes served by the town meeting. And bus service is safe, okay? I just think we have to keep this in mind. We talk a lot about all the other improvements we want to see on the roads. In my opinion, this is the thing that's really most important. And bus service is available in neighboring towns. Acton not only participates in Crosstown Connect, they have Cross Acton Transit for $1 a ride. Bedford has something they call BLT, Bedford Local Transit. It's a hybrid, it's a fixed route service, but for an extra $1, they'll come pick you up at your house. Lexington has 3 routes within town and a 4th route that goes to Burlington Mall and Leahy. All of these services run on a 1-hour heading, run out 1 hour between, times the bus comes by. So funding discussion for bus service, because it isn't in the town's budget, we need to bring this up and get this in discussion with the finance committee and the select board and acknowledged as something that's important, even if we don't have the money for it at the moment, okay? This has to get into the planning pipeline. Capital startup and operating belt. Who plays what role? Funding goals and policies developed by TAC in collaboration with implementing departments, okay? Capital startup and operating budgets developed by the implementing departments. Detailed plans developed by implementing departments. The reason I did this slide is just who does what, so that we're not waiting for somebody else to get started, okay? Just make our role clear. And then finally, the transportation mode roadmap that we presented about a year ago should be our continuing method of communicating with the select board. And the bus service and infrastructure investments should be prominent in the comprehensive planning study. I've lost track of whether they're in there or not, but the comprehensive planning, transportation planning study absolutely has to include this because it was in our roadmap. Okay. That's it. I'm done. Less than 15 minutes. 10.
That was a perfect presentation, and you're speaking my language about the love of public transit. And thanks for drawing our attention back to that.
That second slide is very compelling, Nick. The one that has all the benefits of it. That's terrific.
This one.
I might propose that I have been thinking that it would be fantastic for our committee to do a ride along on the Crosstown Connect service in Acton, maybe in conjunction with their transportation advisory committee, which has a very similar function to ours. It might be a great opportunity for us to learn from our neighbors.
We need a lot of data, like how successful are those services, how much revenue, what are the expenses annually, how did they get their startup funding? We just need to learn all that.
Yeah. I think it would be, we can see if the bus has a slide presentation capabilities and we could do the meeting on the bus. No, but I think that there's a lot to learn there. I will also say that I met with a member of the select board in Wellesley for an unrelated thing. We ended up talking about their public transportation service. They have some wonderful models. They're a little bit more dense than we are, but we could also be learning from them. They've been really on the cutting edge of things. So another example to add to your slide deck there. Does anybody have brief reactions to this that they want to share before we go to correspondence and public comment?
Just great. I support it.
Yeah.
I might note a couple of things if that's okay.
Sure.
So one thing that I was thinking is that I think that it's incredibly important for the TAC to share how important this is with the select board and with the finance committee, and show that this shouldn't, transportation shouldn't be something only for when there's dollars left over. It should be something that is being put into the budget. Transportation is never going to be something that is making money for the town. It's never going to probably be something that, if you look at, how the MBTA is run, how local bus services are run, they aren't funding themselves. They are funded through, through investment in their city, town, organization. And then the funds that come in, they help a little bit, but if we were charged $60 a ticket to get on the local bus, nobody would take it. So we're never paying for the real cost. So I think that's sort of a really important thing to note, that we do have to invest in these kinds of things and convince people that it is something that's worthwhile if it's something that we want to explore. I know that in the past, we've sort of said we're going to go for grants and hope that they can supplement what we need for transportation, whether that is buses or the shuttle service or something like that. We've applied for quite a few, and I think that the good news is that we usually get pretty far in the process. The bad news is that there's always going to be other communities that also need the grants. And so we're always going to be sort of competing with other places that may have more of a population, a greater population that doesn't have access to a vehicle or a bike, or we do have things like the COA van that some other places might not have. So just some things to think about. I think it's a great conversation and something that we're going to have to keep sort of pounding into the minds of everyone around us.
Yeah, I just sent the slideshow to Laura and Aaron, so do with it what you will.
We'll make sure to post it on the website so that we can, I'll have access
It's
to
a
it.
PDF. Yeah, I did it as a PDF, so you can do that. Okay.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. Yeah, so we obviously, everything Aaron says is super important. We need to think about how to get this started. There's a lot of brainstorming can be done. I mean, we may be able to piggyback on one or more neighboring towns setup, that just have them stop in 2 Concord centers as a start or whatever. So there's many things we can brainstorm, but I think this is really important. Thanks, Aaron, for comment. Thanks, Nick.
I will just add that, we have this weird assumption in America that public transportation is supposed to be able to cover its own costs by fare box revenue, but we don't have the same assumption about our car infrastructure. We do not assume that the gas tax is going to pave our roads and pay for all of the infrastructure that supports it and pay for all the parking. We have free street parking in some of the most expensive places in the country, which is mind-boggling. So I think that making the case for why we need to have similar, services for public transportation is huge. And I think that, we as a committee have opportunities to advocate for that with the select board, with other committees in town. There are also, I just want to say that there are also some regional collaborative efforts that we as committee members could join. There's a regional transit authority advocacy coalition. Members of Sudbury's Transportation Advisory Committee and Acton's Transportation Advisory Committee both attend those meetings. There are monthly meetings. And there are, and there's actually legislation pending in our legislature right now that would allow local municipalities to levy certain fees in order to pay for public transit. We could be sending letters in support of those kinds of pieces of legislation. So there are lots of things that we could be discussing as a committee. What I want to do is say, I think we should take this agenda item, put it on our next agenda so we can continue this conversation and move right now, before I go to correspondence and comments, just to take this a little out of order, to talk about our TAC meeting schedule briefly before we lose Aaron. And the first question that I want to ask is, are we happy with our current meeting frequency? And I ask this question because I have been feeling, as somebody who's putting together the agendas, that we do not have enough time to finish a lot of the conversations that we start, and it might be helpful to have a few extra meetings, maybe not over the summer since many people are away and it might be difficult to schedule. But I did want to put it out there that I would be interested in meeting more frequently, but I wanted to sort of pose that as a question to the group. Go ahead, Nick.
One suggestion is Natural Resources that I'm a member of has gone to a 3-week cycle, and they did it for a different reason, but it's sort of 2 seems to me like it may be too often, and 4 isn't, every 4 weeks isn't, or once a month isn't quite enough. So that's a possibility, is something like 3.
That's other thoughts, Mark and Dan?
That makes sense to me. I mean, the only difficulty with that is having the regularity of the
Right.
3rd Tuesday in the month is, easy for people. But since it's being posted anyway, we can do it any way we feel most appropriate.
Yeah,
Um,
trying 3 after the summer sounds reasonable to me.
Yes.
That sounds good. Now, then we're off our regular meeting schedule by quite a lot now. We had our May meeting at a random time, and this is at a pretty unique time as well. Our next scheduled meeting is currently July 11th, which is a little less than 2 weeks away. We could have that meeting and finish up some of these outstanding conversations that we haven't had a chance to finish. And then we can talk about maybe moving to a different schedule at that next meeting. Does that sound palatable to everybody, or should we push it out by a week or 2?
I'm okay with the 11.
I'm okay.
I'm having my Concord broadband installed that day, so I don't know what my coverage is going to be like.
We could have an in-person meeting at the town hall if we wanted to, if we thought connectivity might be an issue.
Yeah, if it's at 11, because he's coming here at 9. So,
Well, this would be at our 7 p.m. time, moving back to our 7 p.m. time.
oh, yeah, it should be fine. In
Okay.
person on the 11th would be good.
As far as I know now, that looks fine.
In person on the 11th works for you, Nick?
Yep, yes.
Okay. I just got to check that I have childcare for the in-person part, and then I'll send out an email and let us know. Let
I
everybody
can
know.
do it either way, on either remote or in person, whatever works.
Perfect. All right, so we will continue the conversation about public transportation priorities at our next meeting, and we'll also talk about meeting frequency and sort of the schedule moving forward. So with that covered, Erin, did we have any correspondence?
No correspondence. I am going to turn it over to you because I have to leave for another meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to make you the host, but it was good to see everybody.
Same here.
Same here. Thanks so much, Erin, for everything. And with that, I'll just open it up for liaison, observer, or public comments. So Janet or Karen, if you have any comments you want to share, go ahead. All right. If there are no public comments, I would entertain a motion to
Move to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, Mark,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you guys so much. Janet
Thank
and
you,
Karen,
Laura.
thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
You
So long.
too. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.